and 2022. Also, we had Panoptic with Guillaume on the pod a few weeks ago, so that is also tangential to options. So very excited to expand that field of topics. And thanks a lot for coming on, Dan.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Max. Exciting. I think, as you said, options need a lot of discussion. So happy to be here and chat about my experience into the space.
Can you give us a brief background about you, how you got into the space, and how did you end up building Rysk?
Yeah. Actually, it's a funny story, like how life sometimes bring you, into opportunities. But I was pretty excited about crypto since 2016, 2015, something like that. As I mentioned right before this call, I was living in Berlin. Berlin was exciting, Ethereum, Gnosis back then. They were starting to work about decentralization and so on. So I got in touch with them, loved the idea. I have my own company, Web2, so I was working on my company, but as a side, crypto was definitely very exciting. What happened in 2020, I used to live in Italy and COVID hit and lockdown in Italy was really bad. Like we couldn't even leave our house. So I am my company and, I was working with that, but even in the spare time, I'm like, okay, I love crypto. It's exciting. So I started to focus a lot into DeFi. And one of the projects that I was using back then was Open because I was already pretty active into DeFi, as I mentioned. And at some point I was using MakerDAO. And I don't know if you remember early 2020, Oracle issue, basically like big liquidation cascade. And so I was like, hey, it must be a way to insure or to have some sort of insurance into there, right? And that's how I discovered Open, and I started to get in touch with the team, and basically I started to somehow be very active into the ecosystem, contributing, helping them out with a few things and so on, because again I had a lot of basically, I wouldn't say spare time, but I couldn't do anything else except of being at the laptop 2020. So that's how I got very excited about options and specifically DeFi options. So 2020 Open, then a few years later, I met my co-founder into the actually Open Discord, and we were discussing about ideas on top of it. And one of the idea that we had, it was should we figure it out a way to provide liquidity into the Open ecosystem? So Open was a very good settlement layer, and we just wanted to bring liquidity into it. And we were like, okay, can we build some sort of options AMM on top of it? And that's how we started with Rysk. So the original idea was, you mentioned Deribit out there. It's original idea is oh, Deribit is a centralized exchange. Can we build an on-chain, version of a very similar to what Uniswap was doing for spot? So that's how we started with Rysk. The first product was extremely challenging in a good way to build, one of those beautiful challenge, pricing options, hedging the book, and build the infrastructure, build the UI and everything. But to be also very honest, was also very hard to get organic demand. Basically, it was we didn't get enough users to sustain the whole product. We had a few very good users that loved the product. They were recurring users, but it was just very hard to scale among non-basically options traders in DeFi. Back then, GMX was around, for example, and it was very popular to trade perps on GMX or DYDX and all of that. So that was kind of the moment where we're okay, what can we do here in the space? To have options to basically be a more mainstream and be used by not traders or not options traders. How can we grow outside of that? And one thing that we learned by doing our product, but also by being in the ecosystem for so long, because as I mentioned, Open started 2020. Around 2021, Ribbon was on top of Open, which was structured products, mostly covered calls. And so we learned all of that. So we sit down with my team and we were okay, I think there is an opportunity here to actually focus into options, but option is not the product. Like, we're not given an option exchange. We're not building option as a product, but we're trying to offer the benefit of option into a very specific use case, which is options as an income or as a yield product. So we focus everything around it. And again, we learned from something like Ribbon, where they got very good traction. Like, they had something like 300 mil TVL at some point, and we were like, that product was somehow bad designed because it was like, too simple, and for many different reasons. I was like, can we build a better version of that, where user can actually earn from option strategies, they can get income. We can target not options traders that they want to trade volatility, but we can target anyone that hold asset and they would like to earn from volatility on top of them. So that's how we designed this new product, Rysk V12. That's how we called it, and we launched that exactly a year ago. Actually, like, today is the day that we announced Rysk V12. We had like a few months of testing, but then we went live around like May or June. And so Rysk V12 since then has been consistently growing every month. As of now, we have about 69.420 mil TVL, which is a very good number and like easy to remember. Consistently growing. So yeah, I mean, overall, that's the story on how we got here, the challenges that we had, and what we were trying to solve as a problem. But yeah, I mean, if I have to summarize what's Rysk innovation, I think is that we didn't focus on option as a product, but we focus on option as a benefit for a very specific use case. So you don't care if you're doing options on Rysk, so you care about earning income on the asset that you hold. And the way we do that is by using options on the back.
So in the pivot and kind of a rebranding from Open to Rysk, how did you decide on the hyperliquid ecosystem to be the right one to build on top? And where do you see your overall role in the hyperliquid DeFi eco?
Yeah, so what happened there was we announced this new product, Rysk V12, and as I said, it was exactly a year ago. And we started to get a lot of demand from the hyperliquid community. We were pretty active there, like, as users, some people of the team that were like extremely active in the ecosystem. So we knew the community. And when we announced that, people were like, oh, I would love to have this product on hyperliquid. And HyperEVM was already around, but back then it was still missing a bit of tooling. As an example, like, we didn't have an HyperEVM scan that was working really well, like, or for example, stablecoin, it was just Felix, which is, was great, but we were looking for, like even more options into that. So what happened is, at some point around May, HyperEVM actually started to took off. Like, tooling arrived, different products like, USDT and all of that. So at that point, we were like, okay, this ecosystem is great from a purely community perspective, so we should definitely launch into that. But on top of that, Rysk works with an RFQ system. So on the other side, we have basically like option buyers, traders, option desk, like, we have them. And for them, it's very important to buy those options from Rysk, but at the same time, they should be able to hedge themselves in a very liquid environment. And Hypercore, with the perps and everything, it is the best venue out there for them. So it was actually very easy to spin up, for example, markets on any asset. And what I mean for any asset is in, I think it was July or August, I think July, Pump Fund have done the ICO, right? And the TG basically. So what happened is, like, on the same day, we were able to do covered calls on top of Pump on HyperEVM, because even the Pump spot and perps market on Hypercore was very liquid. So it was easy for our, for our like desk and traders to actually hedge themselves on the ecosystem. So Hyperliquid was definitely a good way for the community. Like, community loved the product. They love the idea of earning on top of hype, or like kinetic AI, all of those assets. But at the same time, it was also very good for all the actors involved because of the liquidity and everything from Hypercore. So that's why Hyperliquid ended up being the right ecosystem. And the thing when you think about like to household finance, options structure products or option strategies like Rysk are a big part of it. And so that was the right ecosystem to be part of.
Walk us through the basic mechanisms of how Rysk works and maybe walk us through the platform.
Yeah, so I think I can screen share, right? That's probably the easiest way to show Rysk. So let me do it real quick. All right. So you see my screen, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the way we design Rysk is we focus into like mainly two things. One is the accessibility and one is the composability. Accessibility means you should be able to use those option strategies in a very easy and understandable way of what you're doing. Composability is this should be able to let you earn on potentially any asset. So the whole concept of Rysk is if you hold an asset, and it might be, for example, KI, right? In this case, you should be able to earn from volatility on top. We have two main products right now. One is covered call, and the other one is cash secure puts. So the main difference between the two of them is like on covered call, you have an asset like the volatile asset, so IAP, BTC, whatever. You use that as collateral, and you are basically earning on that asset by willing to sell that asset at a higher price. So what I mean is I'm going to click on KIP, and what you see here, which is the main thing and the way we simplified all the process here, is choose the price you're happy to sell KIP on April 24th. So this is the expiry that we have right now, but we have a few, April 10, April 3, like, whatever expiry you decide to go. So in the case of KIP, current price is 38. If you're willing to go at 43, and let's say you want, do 100 KIP, this is like basically the yield or the income that you receive upfront. So in this case, you're going to receive $33, which is annualized, is basically 32.75. Now, this is a very short-term option. We're talking about April 3. If we go April 24, and let's say we're targeting 48 with 100 HYPE, you can get basically $65 upfront. And the mechanism behind this is actually fairly straightforward. You deposit the KIP, which is the collateral. So effectively, you are long KIP. But at the same time, you're shorting a call option at the price that you select in here. So in this case, it's 48, maybe 43, maybe 41, whatever. So you're willing to sell at that asset and you're earning. The closer the asset to the current price, so in the case of 41, the higher is the premium that you receive upfront. There are basically two use cases for this. One are the users that they're actually willing to sell, and they're like, okay, you know what, 41, I think it's a good exit. I'm going to exit. I'm going to get paid to basically, take profit later on. The other use case, which is usually the most common, is people trying to make some sort of like speculation on the asset not being hit. So people are like, I don't think it's going to hit 48 by the end of the month. So I'm willing to take this premium in the meantime, earn income in the meantime. I don't think it's going to hit 48. So that's the kind of like second use case that we see in this case. Cash secure puts are effectively the similar thing, but on the other way around. So what I mean is, let's say we're going to do something very similar. We're going to use USDH, which is, the Hyperliquid stablecoin from native markets. On HYPE, the cash secure puts is actually the opposite. What I mean is like you deposit a stable coin and you are willing to buy HYPE at the expiry. So the price of HYPE right now is 38 and people are like, okay, I think I'm willing to buy at 34. I'm going to earn $63 upfront. Annualize is like, 43% APR. And basically I'm going to try to, earn on my stable coin by willing to buy HYPE cheaper. What happened at the expiry in this case is at the expiry, so exactly at the expiry, you either get back your IPE, you either get back your USDH. So, you deposit, in this case, 1,750. If the price is above the strike price that you select, so 35, I'm selecting 35. If the price is above that, I'm gonna get back my collateral. If it's below that, I'm gonna get basically 50 hype, and basically I'm buying that at the price that I selected. So that's on the cash secure puts. On the covered call, it's basically the same thing, but on the opposite side. So at expiry, you either receive the USDT, effectively acting as a take profit, or you get back your KI collateral in this case. So those are options in a very simplified way. Option strategies to basically earn income on your asset. It's very easy to understand what's going on. It's very easy to understand what is, the outcome at expiry based on the price that you select. And that's how we design the WOP protocol. Everything is designed around this very specific use case.
These are European style options, right? So the only price that matters is the price at expiry. So if in between the price gets hit, it doesn't matter.
Correct. So what happened in the past, basically most of the time, especially at the end of the month expiries, is that price fluctuated a lot. And so people at some point, they were kind of like, getting exercise, but by the end, the price, got back into the range. And so most of the people didn't get exercise. And at some point, it was kind of a meme around the community because people were like, I'm not getting exercise, which is fine. And, people were like, you guys are basically manipulating the market, which is obviously a meme, but it was a fun one that happened basically every end of the month expiry in the last 4 or 5 months. The price was basically going down always a few days before. But yeah, the European, it just better the price at expiry, and you lock your collateral till expiry. And it's also a way for users to actually don't have emotions into the process. So if today you're willing to buy or sell an asset at a certain price, Rysk helps you to basically say, okay, I'm doing this trade right now until expiry, whatever happens, happens. This is I'm not going to put emotions. I'm not going to change my mind. This is basically just taking emotions out of the game.
How are the options priced? Because I remember a few weeks ago, I think it was on one of the Blockworks related pods where they talked about Polymarket introducing these 5-minute up and down BTC markets, which are essentially options. And there supposedly have been huge mispricings because obviously the marginal buyer of these things has no awareness of how to properly price an option, especially if it is about looking 5 minutes into the future. So how are options and the yield that you receive on Rysk priced? And yeah, how does the price building function work?
Yeah, so Rysk uses an RFQ system. So every time I click, for example, this button, you see this loading, right? This is an auction. So this is a 2 seconds auction that we stream to the traders or option desk on the other side. Anyone can be a trader or a desk on the maker side. You just need to basically go through a process, but like it's basically an integration that everyone can build up. So this is an auction and we show you the best quote. So the prices are obviously getting better over time as the protocol is growing, as we're attracting more liquidity, and as we're attracting also more buy side basically demand in this case. The one thing to keep in mind is like on a 5 minutes option or 15 minutes as you mentioned and so on, like it is very hard to price those. But like for options like ours, like especially on IEP or ETH or BTC, they're pretty liquid market out there. So the pricing is somehow fair. I mean, obviously pricing on option is always, we can discuss a lot about like how options pricing, it's somehow always mispriced because you have to somehow making an assumption on the implied volatility, right? But that being said, those options are priced to, again, an RFQ. We show the best bid so the user can, see beforehand which price they're gonna get. The more flow and we have, the better, because now we start to see more integrations. The price is getting more competitive, more aggressive. So overall, it's getting better over time. Obviously, for more liquid asset is better. It's, even hype right now, it's priced pretty well. Again, it is a liquid market also on the hedging side, right? So if you need to hedge a massive bulk of hype options on hypercore, you have a lot of basically hype perps and demand like a liquidity, so it's easy to hedge. But yeah, overall it's getting way more competitive. We've seen prices like getting better and better over time, like even in the last few weeks it's better. We've seen big option desk integrating right now as we speak, because the product is interesting. It's basically like a good DeFi product that is not just used by like average retail or something like that. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Like on Rysk, we started to have funds, we started to have treasuries, institutions, and so on, which this is making like even the pricing and everything more competitive. There is more demand to integrate and provide liquidity. Overall, again, like option pricing is always a function on where the volatility is going to be in in the next month or whatever expiry is, which is always an assumption. So it's probably not always efficient. That's how options are by nature. But also one thing that we wanted to show is like we want to make sure the user understand which price they're gonna get before doing the trade. So for you, it's like, okay, 44, this is the price that you're gonna get. It's on you. You have max control. You have max power. Like you see the price. If you like it, you do the trade. If you don't trade. Which this was, for example, a problem that previous projects had because someone was actually running the strategy for you. So it was basically selecting the strike and the premium for you, which you have basically zero control. And we changed that, but like now you know what you're gonna get before doing the trade. And our focus as as a protocol is to make sure that this is liquid enough. And that's also a reason why, for example, we have caps here, right? And a lot of users have been asking like, why you guys have caps? Caps is a mechanism for us to make sure that those prices are competitive. So we have like some sort of function there where, we make sure that we let you trade as long as we believe that the prices are competitive and the counterparties can take that demand. If we believe that, at that point it's not more like fair or efficient anymore, like we basically stop, eat caps and everything like that. So we are working to make sure that the prices are competitive and getting, aggressive also on the bid because at the end of the game, the user is going to benefit of it.
Are there any tail risks when it comes to the execution? So if the price, let's say on the market you're just showing of K hype is going far, far beyond $44, how does the execution work in the backend so you're not getting stuck in a position? Because obviously, if you're willing to sell K hype at 44, now let's say it's at 60 and somebody else bought that claim, how do you not get stuck in that position?
You mean as a user, right? So if you open discover call position, I mean, you have to go to expiry. That's the way it's designed now. So if you're willing to sell hype at 44 until expiry, like if hype is, as you said, like a 60, you're basically giving up that $16 upside. That's the nature of this product. So the risk is there. Like obviously you're giving up the upside to get paid today for that upside. So there is a risk. But in terms of protocol risk, like there is no, I mean, you're gonna get paid the dollar, like the execution as element is fully collateralized and so on. So there is no risk that you're not gonna get paid or something like that. But like the upside, missing upside is the nature of this product. Like that's basically why you're getting paid, because you're giving up that upside. So on that, it's like, yeah, it is definitely the risk that you take in on entering such a position. Now, what I've seen from some users is like at that point they hedge themselves. So they're using Rysk. If the price is like, as you said, like there is some green candle on the way up and so on, they basically can, long eye on a perp and so on, and basically trying to hedge themselves and reducing that sort of like missing upside. But what we've done is like we make sure that the users understand that they're missing that upside. Like even in the way we design the UI, is like if the price is above 4,000, in this case 44, you're gonna get back you're gonna get back dollar. You're not gonna get back your collateral. So far, like we've been running this for months. Users understood exactly how this works. Like no one complained about, oh, I didn't understand what I was doing, which to me is the most important thing. It's like they know exactly what's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, there is that potential risk of missing the upside.
Who's the counterparty when I am selling options? And maybe related to that, can you introduce us to the premium function on Rysk?
Yeah, so the counterparty right now is they're either option desk, but also a few traders. They basically built a bot, and they're buying from the user. So, and when I say trader, it's like I'm talking about normal, just like sophisticated options traders that build the infra and the trading. But we also have a few option desk focused mostly on options as their core business. So the counterparties right now, we also have a few market makers, obviously. One thing I like to mention here, which I'm kind of proud of, like until today, we did not pay any market maker. Like it's the integration is purely for the trading and for the floor, so they don't get any special deal or something like that. In the case of Rysk Premium that you mentioned, like Rysk Premium is, to give a bit of background on what it is and how we started. It's like what happened is that we started to see institutions using Rysk. So they were basically using the product, and they got in touch with us and they were like, hey, I think I need more customization. And for customization, we mean they wanted certain asset that maybe we were not supporting, but sometimes it was also a matter of compliance. For example, it's like, I need to make sure that the counterparties are whitelisted because I'm an institution, I'm registered, and all of that. So what we designed with Rysk Premium is a very similar approach with a completely different mechanism, but to something like Morpho, right? The idea is you can spin up a vault on top of this product, and the vault is fully customizable. So the vault can, run on any asset. You can, I don't know, if you want to open like a covered call position, like a year far away, you can potentially do it. If you want to have some very specific asset, you can do that. If you need a curator, because again, you might be an institution, so you want a third party to handle your option strategies, you can also have curation and so on. So Rysk Premium is effectively a vault system on top of this infrastructure that can be used mostly for like funds, treasuries, institutions to run more customized strategies on top. So it's also a matter of like scale, like, if some of them, they're running pretty big size, and so they need a very specific infrastructure for them. So that's the way that we designed and built Rysk Premium. The nice thing about Rysk Premium is like it's super flexible. You can do potentially anything on top. So now we also see protocols using Rysk Premium, for example, to run certain strategies or something like that. But in reality, like the long-term goal is for us is like to make sure that any option strategies could be priced. And so Rysk Premium is just a different distribution for the same product.
Are there any yield opportunities or any of the premium vaults that you find particularly interesting right now?
I mean, right now, one of again, the main users are institutions that they're looking for mostly like compliance, or they have like different reasons. It's not just about the yield. It's mostly like other issues that they have around. But overall, they're running the same strategies that you can run on your own or Rysk. It's just like bigger size. So for example, Hyperion DeFi, which is a treasury on Hyperliquid, they're basically running cash secure puts on USDH, trying to buy ideally Hyperliquid cheaper or earn a yield on top of the stable coin, in this case USDH. So they're not doing anything crazier than what an average user could do on Rysk. It's just that the execution flow and the infrastructure is designed for all their limitations and all of that.
So you also have a points program going, as far as I know. Can you briefly detail what is up with that? And yeah, we don't have to go too deep into this if you don't like to.
Yeah, I mean, options started because users of Rysk, they were like, hey, can we get rewarded somehow by being early, right? And that was like a long time ago, or at least it seems a long time ago. But and the idea was basically like to give based on your activity and how much you're contributing to the growth of the protocol. What happened over time is that a lot of like even those users, they were like, we don't care about options, we don't care about like points anymore somehow, because points go, especially for other protocols and so on, they ended up being not exactly what they expected. So the honest answer about points is like we still have it. We still believe it's a very good way for everyone out there to have a score on the activity. And that is growing, and people are very proud of like being on top of leaderboard and so on. But what we make sure about, and even talking to top points holder and so on, it's like, would you use this product anyway without points? Like, are you using Rysk just for the points or for the product, right? And the consensus there is like most of the people like, I'm using the product because it's objectively a good product. I like to earn from volatility. It's the only alternative I have out there in a very accessible and composable way. So I'm using the product anyway, and the point is just a way for me to earn on top, or at least not to earn, but like to have a measure of like what I'm like, how big of a power user of this I am. Plus, the other thing that we figured out with points is it was also very good for some users. They have like their own communities and they wanted to see and track, for example, how much of their community were using something like Rysk. So having like referral on points and so on, it is a metric for them to see, okay, my community is active, they're using Rysk, they like it, and so on. So the point system there is basically a way to have a score on like how power of a user you are, how active you are, and how active is potentially your community if you focus on referral. But yeah, this is pretty much, and we've been running that for I think like 4 or 5 months, something like that maybe. And yeah, I mean, we just make sure the points is not the reason why people are using the product. And so far, that seems to be the case. And that's, to us, is the most important thing.
You've seen quite exponential growth in terms of TVL and activity ever since summer 2025. So it seems like V12 has been sticking around, and particularly since the beginning of the year, you've been growing quite fast. What are the adoption metrics that you are paying attention to, and what does your current growth strategy look like?
Yeah, so the main metrics that we look at is, obviously growth, which for us is a function of TVL somehow. When I say it's a function of TVL is because at the expiry we settle the position, right? So what happened at the expiry is like, as as I show on the app here, is like, if you do KI on the expiry, you get either collateral or USD. So the funds leave the protocol. So when you see our TVL, it's always, up and down, up and down, up and down because of expiry. So it's actually on Rysk, the TVL is actually very active. That's why I think it is a good metric for us. So it will be probably hard to see Rysk as $1 billion TVL, because it means that if we have $1 billion, that is actually TVL that accumulated like in a very short time frame. It's not passive with, for example, lending or protocols like that. That being said, because of this, the main metric that we look at least internally is like retention. So how much of the funds are getting back after expiry, because we settle the position, we give you the money back. Now, are you using Rysk again? That's kind of like the main metric for us that matters. And on average, in the last couple of months, we had a 90% funds retention. What I mean is, from every dollar of TVL, 90% was coming from returning users that they were using the product before, which for us is like basically the main metric and the thing that we are, at least personally, I'm like the most proud of, because having such a high retention rate is hard, especially for a product that, again, like has expiries and we settled every position. So the growth that we have in right now is mostly because users keep putting money back into the protocol. What's the growth strategy? So far, it's been pretty simple. We've been using asset as a as a distribution. So, in the page right now, you see K-Hype, people from K-Hype community that hold this asset, and, they know that we exist because co-marketing or being active into the community and so on. And people are like, okay, this is actually a good product where I can, use K-Hype to earn on top of it. And so they deposit K-Hype into Rysk and try to earn on top. So asset as distribution is probably the main strategy that we've done, or like, USDH still on Hyperliquid and so on. Other than that, the driver of the growth, especially in the last couple of months, has been a function of the market as well. So volatility side. So earning from volatility is a good way of getting a potentially good income out of it. And in these market conditions where especially interest rate and so on, they are low, people are looking for a good opportunity to earn income out of it. And Rysk is a very easy and accessible way to do that. So that's definitely a function of the market. Like, it is an opportunity right now, and that's why we keep growing and we get users. For example, on cash secure puts is actually our main product right now, because people are thinking in a very simple way of like, I have stable coins and I like, and I'll show you again because it's good that we're talking, but like the assumption here is as simple as, I have a stable coin, in this case USDC, BTC is 69, and I'm willing to buy a 62 by the end of the month, and in the meantime I'm gonna get a 26% APR. That's a very easy framework for people, and for most of the user of this industry, probably getting in a BTC at 62 is a good entry, and earning 26% to do that is actually, on stable coins, is actually a very good yield opportunity out there. And that's the reason why it's been growing a lot in the last couple of months. And it's, even in terms of user acquisition, the fact that the product is so simple and you don't have to be an options trader to use it, it's actually a very easy onboarding tool. Like, people know exactly what's going to happen, in which conditions, and it's very easy to use. And again, you don't have to be an options trader, because one thing that we learned, a lot of experience in the space, is that many times there is a negative bias when it comes to options. Like, especially in crypto, people are scared of using options most of the time. They're like, oh, I tried, I got burned, I lost money, I didn't know what was going on, I didn't know how to select them, and bricks, they're just too complicated. Like, there is this negative bias overall. And what we've done with Rysk is like, we want to make sure that you are not scared of using it. Like, exactly what's going to happen and when, and you don't have to be like scared of this. And that's why I think most of our users are not even options traders. And many of them came to me as like, it was the first time I've done an option trade in my life. It was through Rysk, and I'm happy about it because I know exactly the benefit, and I know exactly what what are the risks and what I'm giving up in terms of, trade-offs and everything like that. So that's the main growth, like making a product that is easy to use, easy to understand, accessible. It's literally one click. We try to simplify everything in the process, and that's the key and the best acquisition out there.
This relates a lot to what Guillaume from Panoptic also said, that the way to bring options to market in DeFi is not necessarily as offering some new exotic financial primitive and a hugely complex product suite, but a scalable way to earn yield with kind of an infinite canvas of opportunities to earn yield. Because for most people, that is the more appealing side, especially for a rather return-starved retail participant base in DeFi, or the pro-tail folks as well. To finish off, what is your outlook for the rest of the year when it comes to Rysk, the Hyperliquid DeFi eco, and also your competitive landscape when it comes to options protocols?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of overall global environment, I think it's going to be volatile as it is right now. So back to what I just said, with volatility, I think volatility income is a good opportunity. In terms of Hyperliquid, I think Hyperliquid is definitely on the right direction to. I mean, it is already, and it's going on the right direction to be the most exciting, product and ecosystem out there. I have no doubt this is going to happen again in 2026. HIP-3 is insanely it's insane how big the potential of the product is. I'm like, I was skeptical at the beginning somehow about HIP-3. I was like, it's interesting, but do they gonna get all this flow and so on? And like they proved me wrong in just a few months. I was like, this thing is growing. It's insane. So I'm think HIP-3 is gonna be big. HIP-4 options, or at least outcomes, are binary options. I think it is also a very good opportunity. We design our own UI, which I can actually show, I think, right now if I have it on testnet, because it's not live yet. But I think I don't know. I don't remember the URL. All right, I need to figure it out. But yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is like HIP-4 is simplified, options, binary, and so on. So I think that's also going to be very interesting. As an alternative to predictions, we are working into there right now. We built our own riskified UI. That's how we call it. Like basically, we're using builders code. So we're not deploying markets, but we're using the already deployed markets on Hyperliquid. If Hyperliquid team decide to go permissionless into HIP-4, we are definitely very interested and already working into that. So yeah, I mean, Hyperliquid, I think is extremely exciting. I think the ecosystem overall proved to be on the right direction to household finance, and I see options, strategies, and income from those options and so on, like being a big part of that, or like even structured products and everything. So I think like if you ask me like what is Rysk positioning to the Hyperliquid ecosystem, like we are that place. It's like the accessible way to access income from option strategies or structured product with options on the back. This is definitely the direction that we've taken. The other thing that we're doing is we are still doubling down into risk premium, as I mentioned, like getting more institutions and so on. And that's also a function of like Hyperliquid getting more exciting, for example, for HIP-3 and new markets. We've seen like SP500 getting into like with trade and the unit team and all of that. So we definitely see more demand getting in, and we believe that that's a market that we are able to capture. But on top of that, we are also like one of the good thing about Rysk is like how composable it is, and like the fact that you can use any asset. So we are working to bring even more assets into the system. Right now, HyperEVM is a bit limited for just the basic Hyperliquid assets. Like, it's very good if we have like AI or staking HYPE or whatever assets on the ecosystem. But if we are thinking about how can we also target way more assets outside of that, because crypto is big. Like for example, people have been asking for BTC or ETH staking or yield bearing asset to use as collateral instead of just unit BTC and so on. So we are working into that. But the direction that we're taking is if there is an asset, it should be able to earn on top of it. So tokenized stocks, we are working with X stocks to launch with them. So you should be able to use your HOOD or coin or Tesla tokenized stocks as collateral and run strategies on top, or gold, for example. So the idea is options income on every asset, and that's basically what we're doubling down. And I think again, Hyperliquid ecosystem is on the right direction to household finance, and we will be that place to basically do option strategies on top.
Definitely keen to see what is to come for the rest of the year. I think this gave a very good overview of what Rysk is doing, and everybody who is concerned about farming yields, which I would argue is the majority of the audience, you should definitely go and check Rysk out, because yeah, it is a more, let's say, sustainable and organic yield sources than most of the other stuff that is subsidized by points and looping these up that we are seeing in DeFi otherwise right now. Also, there's less risk of minting stable coins out of nothing and leading to depegs and vaults getting drained and a lot of utilization spiking and a lot of contagion happening there. So thanks a ton for coming on, Dan. Where can people find you and how can they reach out?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to find us mostly on X. So mine is Dan DeFi, or Rysk is Rysk Finance. So that's the easy way. We have a Telegram group with the community, like users or people around the community. If people have like any questions and so on, that's probably the right place to be, because you can see other users. It's actually one of my favorite places to hang out now. Is like being on the race communities. Like users are talking about everything, and it's fun. It's a good place. There are memes. There are like people talking about volatility, talking about not just the product, but about everything else. But it's also a very friendly community. So if you have a question and so on, like maybe it doesn't have to be me replying, but it can be another user based on his experience and so on. So yeah, I mean that's probably the place. For the Telegram group. Like you can see on the app. I think you see it basically on the footer right here. Like this is gonna just bring you on the Telegram group. I think that's the right place. One thing to mention about that, as you can imagine, a lot of scammers, impersonators, and so on. So absolutely double check everything you do, because especially like when people ask me like, do you think you have PMF? I'm like, I don't know if we have PMF. Like I think so, because retention and so on. But like based on the number of like impersonators, scammers, and things that we have, like think we are into something, because every day I have like a user or whatever. It's like, hey, someone from Race Finance tried to reach out. It's a scammer, impersonator, and so on. So unfortunately, that's sad. That's bad. So that's why I'm saying like, make sure you watch out everything you do, because we have unfortunately we have a lot right now of that around. So watch out. But Telegram group is our safe place. Just hang out there.
All right, we'll make sure to put all the links in the description. Thanks a ton for coming on, Dan, and I will hopefully be able to welcome you on the show soon again.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thanks for the discussion. Thanks for the opportunity. Great questions. And yeah, thanks for giving me the time.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Max.